Hello and welcome to this latest block of Under the Microscope. This time we're looking at the low block and emergency defending. And with me, I've got Ben Futcher. My name's Paul McGuinness. And it's the sort of last in a series for the A license of looking at the process under the microscope of really zooming in at certain aspects of play. The session's aims today are again using the observation skills, utilising observation skills under the quadrant, really looking very closely and then looking at the defending using the quadrant tool, which is basically zooming in and looking at the area that the defender and the attacker and the spaces they're utilising. And we're also trying to observe the connections between players on, around and away from the ball, and before, during and after actions. And we're translating this into 1v1 observation skills to the wider context of the game. It's not just a 1v1 duel, it's how it affects the other players around them. Again, we're taking it from not just having the wider view of the full 11 aside, we're going to zoom in to the duel, really, the 1v1 duel, and look at key factors. We're going to look at them before the ball comes, so we have to look away from the ball and look at the duel as it's developing. We'll look at what happens during that duel and after the duel's gone on. And in a sense, we look in priority order. We assess, which spaces the defender must control, and also which the attacker tries to exploit. And we're trying to create a clear picture, a working model, a framework of common pictures and common scenarios that happen in the game. And again, this process is vital: scanning, perception, and movement skills. And to do that, you have to zoom in and work systematically. Start with the head and work down. And we'll watch and observe the range and frequency of timing of scanning skills. For the defender, it's vital that they know where their opponent is all times, but they've also got to look at the ball. So the time of looking at the ball, looking at their opponent, this is really a physical skill to get your body in the right position and to get your head checking. And then it's the perceptual skills. What do you see? What's your opponent going to do next? Body position, vital. Observing the shoulders, arms, hips, the whole body position, the body orientation as regards to the goal. Are they able to move forward and back quickly? Are they able to win the race with their opponent? Footwork, foot patterns, stride length, the way they turn, the hips moving, all in a systematic way. We'll work from the head downwards because it's impossible really to see everything at once. And then what skills are required to overcome the challenges within the low block emergency defending in the final third of the pitch, or the lowest area, you're defending third. And this is the sort of model we've looked at throughout the series, and looking first at position. What position does the player get? Does the defender get to their opponent? Scanning, as we mentioned before, checking and scanning, and the perception that comes into it. Movement skills, again, the use of the body, the use of the feet. The body orientation is really important here. Are they chest facing forward? Are they side on? Are they back to goal? Are they facing their own goal? Would be really important. Timing, so the timing of reading cues and triggers to make the move at the right time. And then technique, what are the techniques maybe for heading, for clearing, for getting a toe in to be on the front foot, all the footwork and so on. And here we've put deception. Again, deception can be used, and I call it more cunning craft skills. Maybe hiding your intentions and then nipping in front of the striker would be one of those. And just craft skills where the defender is getting into the right positions all the time, and really using their body at the right time to win the duel. And with all of those, if you put them all together, those cues, the looking and so on, that leads to anticipation. And communication in defending is absolutely vital, that you're anticipating the right place to be, the right positions to get into, the movement of the players, anticipating by looking at the cues of the passer and the receiver, and in doing so, also communicating both with your body position, your positional play, your body, and verbal signals to your teammates as well, and maybe through hand signals. And the last bit here is really probably really important, is the context. What are your strengths and weaknesses against your opponent? How do you play against different opponents? And also different stages of the game, different weather conditions would all come into the decisions that you make. The solutions. What are the solutions to game challenges within the low block emergency defending phase? These really would be what we've shown, looking towards the goal. These are what the attackers, the general movements, the common movements that you might get on the right, overlaps, underlaps, horizontal runs to the right-hand side of the box. You know, there's a blind side run. So these are the sort of things that really you're trying to read and avoid as a defender. You're trying to read that these are the things that the strikers and the midfield players are trying to make the passes or the dribbles. And then it's how do you combat those as a defender? This would be the broad DNA model for it, where you're looking here from the front to show away from goal, to show outside. Maybe other teams show inside at different points, but this model here that the England teams have used is to show away from goal, to have a compact shape in the middle, no through passes, to keep them wide, really, to show them wide, in and around the box to stop crosses, and then, of course, to mark, cover and defend in front of the goal as a basic model. Then inside that, this is the view of the threats that you might have from the defender's point of view. How do we stop these threats? And here we're showing the advantage is with the attacker. So again, that blindside run to the side, the space is there for the ball to be played inside the fullback for the wide man to run onto. You see that the left-hand side point of the box. But of course, it's the job of the defenders to get in the best positions to try and stop these. So here you see an example of it. On that left-hand side, you've got a sort of a common threat that might be a ball inside the fullback, a blindside run where he's maybe got caught square. And how would you deal with that if you're the defenders? So in that sense, the defender has the chance through their positional play to change the whole shape of it, and the shape in that sense of the quadrant, to change the picture by dropping deeper and cutting that line of the pass off and forcing play really into the feet and away from goal. And that gives them time, the fullback here, say, to get over quickly and maybe show the play outside and prevent the ball being played inside and behind them for the runner behind. And here you see the two differences by the adjustment of position, just dropping that couple of yards. They're able to open a body, see the man on the ball, and stop getting done really with when they're looking at the ball and a blindside run. That would be a common picture, Futch, in all areas of the pitch, really, but particularly for fullbacks and centre backs, trying to prevent that happening.
Yeah, I think it's really important that sometimes the defenders are not trying to win the ball. They're trying to gain control of a situation and dictate where they want the play to go. So, as you say, you're not trying to win the ball maybe on a blindside run. You're dropping a bit deeper. You're trying to entice the pass to the wide player, so you're still goal side. So they're not in behind you. You're trying to keep the play in front of you, so it's the safest option. So you can delay. You might get some teammates back, or then you can go and deal with a 1v1. You need to turn that 2v1 into your advantage and try and create it into a 1v1. So in that situation, a blindside run, you want the ball to go to potentially the wide player, and then you can go and engage. And so you've gone from a 2v1 where they can get in behind you to now the play's in front of you and you can go and address it, and that then creates the 1v1. So it's how you turn a disadvantage into your advantage as a defender. And it's not always about winning the ball at first. It's about positioning yourself and dictating play through good positioning.
Yeah, I think good positioning and then body shape, doesn't it, opens up to let you show that. And then probably the next run would be to really close down and get to almost the point of the box there, the quadrant, and really show you with your body and your shoulders to show outside and to block the cross, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's really important. I think you see on the picture on the left, the attacker and defender, they're both on the same line. So then you're enticing that passing behind, and that space is in behind, whereas the picture on the right, the defender's dropped into the opposite, into the bottom half of the quadrant. And it's really give more the man on the ball a problem. So as you say, your body position, your body shape now, is you're cutting anything off down the inside of you, and you're almost inside looking out. So you're forcing that ball out now, and you're in the bottom half of the quadrant to the attacker. And you kind of give yourself that bit of time where is if your body shape's right, you can go out there and address it.
Yeah, good. I really like that phrase. Warren Hackett uses that as well. As a fullback, you're on the inside looking out and forcing the play outwards. Excellent. And here's another example of this. Here, they're trying to get a 1-2 to really commit the defender and to play around him. And again, the adjustment by just dropping off a little bit, that really is allowing the pass to feet, but keeping everything in front of you, and then being able, as the ball goes, to close down and stop the forward pass and to block anything going forward. So again, the same principle that in that quadrant, you can actually dictate the shape of things by your positional play. You're actually, where we've shown in the previous presentations, that the striker can dictate the shape of the interaction. Here, the shape and of the picture really is dictated by just dropping off a little bit, delaying, let them having it in front of you, and being able to close from there. And again, you see the difference in the position by just dropping is stopping that penetration, and allowing really time for other people to get back and delay. Yep. And so what does that look like within the game? We have some clips now coming up to have a look at it.
Yeah. Cheers, Paul. We're going to look at a couple of clips now. So we're going to run through this first clip, take a look at what you see, and then we'll come and break it down. Okay, so as we watch the clip develop, we're focusing on the top of the screen on Lindelof and Giroud. The duels almost started at this point. So even though the cross has not come in, and we see play develop and recycle, we can see Giroud at the top of the screen there. He's almost walking back, trying to get the blind side of Lindelof. So as we can see now, Lindelof has a little scan for him. But the issue for me as we hold it there is Lindelof's body position. After he's scanned, he's not altered his position, so it's not enabled to almost scan again, and he's not reacted to what he's seen. So as we let it flow, and we put the quadrant around it, and we really put it under the microscope, we can see both players in the top half of the quadrant. Now, if Lindelof would have just adjusted his position, and for me, it opened up his shoulders a little bit, he'd have been able to see and feel Giroud. Now, in that point there, if he'd have been there, he can now react to any movement that Giroud makes. So he's got that reaction time. Any run across the front, he can track it, he can potentially block it, and he's also in a position to deal with any ball that comes in and go and actually win the first contact. As it played out, we can see he's give that space to the attacker, and it becomes a foot race. And because he can't see him, Giroud gets the march, and if we hold it there, we can see that front post blocking zone has not been filled by the first defender, which has really give Lindelof a problem. I think any striker now in today's game who gets goal side of a defender in the box like that, you're in real problems, and it just becomes a foot race. And once he's wrong side the defender, there's not a lot you can do, and half a yard, and it results in a goal. So that's just highlighting your position, how important your starting position is, and your body position to the end outcome. So, anything to add to that, Paul?
Well, it just, again, it looks at context, as well. Who's the player you're playing against? Is he good in the air? Is he strong? Does he make near post runs? Do you know about that? Then position. He's obviously a little bit too high. He's caught square in a sense of being on the same line as the defender. He needs to be that little bit deeper. The scanning, his body position doesn't allow him to scan as much. Although I think also the big thing about the body position is if you're too open and too square, you can't actually move quickly back and forward towards the goal. So I think now is more of you've got to be side on, maybe a little bit open, but be able to quickly look over your shoulder, turning your neck and your head, so that then if they do play that ball in there, you're still able to have the right lines of force. You're running back towards your own goal quickly if you need to. Absolutely. And it's a really clear example. of how you would use all those things, and then look for the triggers. The other thing about the context probably is, well, how do you work with your other players around you? So can the two of them at the back post be talking? But also, in the ideal world, you would want your first centre back to be blocking that first space, to be in the near post space. So can he not get dragged out of the middle? Can the midfield player maybe take the players around there as well?
Yeah, brilliant. Can you just move it on for the side, please? Okay, we're going to have a look at a second clip now. The focus is on Eric Dier. So if you just have a little look through, then we'll break it down again. Okay, so it's a little bit of a longer clip to get some context. So the first free kick comes in. I think you can see Dier here. He gets in the line of the ball and picks up the flight and trajectory, so then he gets a clear header on it, and he heads it into a good, height and distance into a safe area. But now as play develops, we can see him in the middle. He's constantly changing his position, and as the central defender goes in tight, he offers some cover and balance. And I think now when the ball goes wide, he's anticipating that clip. The difference from the first clip with Lindelof and what Dier's done, he's got himself in the bottom half of the quadrant. Like you said, Paul, his body position now, it's not fully open, but it's open enough so he can see. And it's really important that he can feel the striker. So anything that does come in, he knows he's got time to react, he can adjust, and he can even block the run if he needed to. So as we let it run, the ball doesn't come and it gets recycled out. But if we keep looking, he's constantly feeling for the striker. He's moving with him. And what I call, he checks the striker. So he gets in front, so he's making the striker think. But as he comes out with his body position open, it enables him to scan all the pitches. So he's checked his left shoulder. He's constantly aware where the ball is. Checks his right shoulder. So he's aware of where the strikers are, where his defenders are. Now, as the ball comes back across the pitch, you can see his hips, his shoulders. They're always moving with the ball. He never turns his back. And now when the ball's wide, he can recognise his wing-back's got 1v1. Again, he's anticipating a cross. And he probably knows now the ball is going to come in because the shape of the opponent. So again, when we look at the quadrant and we use this as an observational tool, we can see he's in the bottom half of the quadrant. Again, he's having a little look for the striker. He knows where he is, but he's giving that time, give himself the time to react to any movement across the front, give himself the opportunity to go and attack the ball, which I think is really important for a defender as well. You don't get obsessed with the striker. So he's put himself in a really good position where he can deal with both scenarios. And as the play develops, once again, we can see there that front post blocking zone has not been filled by the first defender. So again, it potentially could have given Dier a problem, but because he's got a good position, he's able to go and attack the ball. He gets first. He goes for me with the correct foot, with a big surface area, makes a really good clearance. So they're just two examples of how it can look and the importance of starting position and what marking can look like in the box. Anything to add to that, Paul?
Yeah, really, we've watched a couple of examples, but it's important to say what we're really trying to do is show a process for you to observe, to clearly look within that quadrant, to look closely at what's happening, but also to watch before, during, after. There's a long period in that clip where he's obviously not touching the ball. What's he doing off the ball? So we have to learn not just to look at the ball, but to be constantly looking at players away from the ball. That's part of the observation process. And then we're checking from the head right down. Is he scanning? Yes. What's his position like? Yeah, we've seen that. What's his body orientation like? What's his footwork like? What's his timing like to get into position? All those things we're checking. And then the technique, his technique, he comes towards the ball, but he's balanced. He doesn't swing at the ball. He just gets a nice firm contact and gets the weight of the ball away. So all of those things, that's a process that we could have put it around any of the defenders. We could have put it around the fullback. We could have looked at the midfield players. And we must remember this is a process for you to take away. We can't look at every player in this instant, but they're really good examples, and they're good to show you both what we say here is a model of maybe good practice in that situation and maybe where it could have been improved on in the first one. And basically that's coaching, isn't it? You'll do that with your players, and you'll take away these little bits of models and ideas, and then you'll apply them to your own players when you're watching them.
Okay, so we're going to look at one more clip now, and we're going to see it from a bit of a different perspective. So we've seen a couple of crosses that have been delivered, and now we're going to want to see what it looks like from maybe a smaller defender marking against a big physical striker.
Yeah, and here we're not just looking at the area on the ground, you know, where we've seen the quadrant before and just seeing what spaces they are. We're taking the space that the duel actually works in is a cylinder, is a space that goes higher up. And particularly when you get into close quarters sort of combat here, then it's important that you're able to observe exactly what's happening as the duel develops, and what are the forces involved. If you look at the legs, you look at the arms, you look at the bodywork, these are all important skills that you have to be able to observe the top players doing, create again a little model and some analogies maybe in your mind, and then be able to apply and coach your players with.
We'll just have a look at the clip now.
Yeah, and again, this is the context that comes into it. It's useful here to freeze frame it. And of course, you can do this at home. You can take a clip on your iPad, or you can just rewind on the TV and just go through it frame by frame to see exactly what happens. And you see that he's clever here, really, Gomez, in the fact that at first he's outside his man, but then he comes back round to get in position goal side. But in number 3 and number 4, what he really doesn't want is for Kiefer Moore, who's a lot taller, he's very dangerous in the air. He doesn't want him to go behind him and come from deep and get a good run and have space. So you see in 4, he's got his arm up just to feel where he is and almost guide him in front of him. He doesn't want that run behind him to be able to go. And then you see in 5, you've got to be very careful he doesn't foul. He can't grab his shirt, but at the same time, you're allowed to use your arms because you need to jump. And a key thing here for me is that if you jump, you have to use your arms for leverage. And if you're the first one to get in the jump and you get your arms above your opponent, the biomechanics of it all means they're going to jump and push you up. And you're going to restrain them a little bit and stop them jumping. So it's not a foul, this. I think he's just got the advantage of getting his arms above Kiefer Moore and in 6. And then as he jumps in 7, his body's close and he's got more, instead of running off a running jump where he can get up with a real good stride, like a basketball layup, a 1-2 jump up high and long through the ball. He's actually saying, no, now in 7 and 8, while you're jumping, we're very tight together and you're not going to get a clean jump and you won't get any power off a run up. And you'll just, as he does in the clip, he just sort of lobs the ball back in the air. So I think it's vital to see that technique. And in effect, if you're talking about analogies, instead of him having a clear run along the pavement, along a space, really, he's almost confined him to jumping with him in a telephone box space where it's not very easy to get a clean run and jump. And really, you'd say very clever defending. That would be the context. Do you know your opponent's strengths and weaknesses, and how do you negate them?
Yeah, I think that's really important, Paul, because I think Gomez in that clip is probably, he's really wary of him pulling around the back of him, like you said, because he's probably 5 or 6 inches bigger. But he probably knows he's got the foot speed to cover across the front. So he's actually on the pitch, clip 3. He's actually probably marking just on the back of him to block any sort of movement around the back of him. And then, as you said, I think it's what success. So he's not actually won the header, but he's not allowed the striker any force or any forward momentum to get any power behind it. So he just dollies it to the goalkeeper. So it's a really good point you make about knowing your strengths and weaknesses. And as you say, it's understanding that I can't win the header, but I tell you what, this is what I can do to make sure my big opponent doesn't get a clean contact on the ball. And I think he does it really well.
And then it would be, of course, everybody else is reading that. You've probably spoken about it before the game. It's a tactic you might know you use. You know the guy's dangerous. So while he's doing that, the rest of the players are then on the front foot. They're getting their body positions right, the position between the goals, so that they can react to any second balls that may be knocked down and be moving forward towards the ball. So that would be then, working together as a centre-back pair and as a unit, as a back four, and a midfield maybe looking for any balls that drop down. And they would be all things you would coach around that in this type of session to, defend against free kicks, crosses, corners. Good. So, how does context, we've talked about that quite a few times, really affect your decisions in the low block emergency defending area, in that defensive third? What's the context that might affect it? And not just in this area, but in games in general. I think we've now coming to the end of a series where we've said, look, this is a process to look through to help you, but to help you also know that it's not a model for every situation. There's certain principles and key factors you'll look at, but depending on the player, depending on the circumstances, they will be adaptable. And they might have to be adaptable here. There's lots of different contexts. You've got a massive crowd on the left, huge pressure maybe on the players. It may be a playoff. So how is that going to affect how decisions are made and how the players are playing? And also, weather conditions on the right, they will come into account as to what's the best way to deal with a situation. In each of these, you'll still use the key factors and so on, but you'll be taking into account, well, what are the conditions like? Is it slippy? What would be the best course of action in each situation? The scoreline, bottom left, that'll affect decisions. Is it a game that you can afford to draw, that you might need to win, depending where you are in the league? Who are the opponents? What's the standard of the opponents? All those things will bring the context in. And here, I think this was Wembley for one of the biggest crowds ever for the female game at Wembley, playing there with a huge crowd in terms of the women's game. How did that affect the players and how you expect them to play and how you would judge their actions? And then these two, I think, are probably the most important considerations in terms of context when you're looking at your own players. On the left, you're thinking about, they're so different. Peter Crouch, here, and really thinking about the difference between two top players playing together and how would they play off each other. Phillips here and Crouch, what would be the way that you would approach? It would be a completely different approach to the strengths and weaknesses of them in terms of their coaching, but also how do they play together? So we have to take that into consideration when we're looking and we're thinking about what about the context of the opponent. I think it's Joe Linton, probably 3 or 4 stone heavier than Foden here. But what strengths and weaknesses do they both have in order to get an advantage? So there's no one model, one size fits all. It's for you to take into account, position, scanning, movement factors, body orientation. They're clear things that are really important. Deception, timing, and technique. I think, but they will be different depending on the different capabilities of the players.
I was going to say, Paul, within the same game, a defender might have to mark a small striker like a Sean Wright Phillips, but then with 20 minutes to go, he might go off and Peter Crouch come on. So within the same game, you're playing against 2 very, very different types of strikers. So it's what's in the defender's toolbox and what skills does he use to play against the different strikers. And sometimes that's within the same game.
Yeah, and that's why you want to, in your games program, be playing against different types of teams and so on, and matching people in training, sparring partners in training to give them different threats or to adjust your training or games so that maybe sometimes defenders play 1v1. They don't have any cover as they're growing up as defenders, or in different systems. So yeah, and different positions will help their development. So the context and the considerations for when we take from our observations and our analysis, we take it into the next phase of it, is to design the right sessions, games programs, coaching, and to give the players the right feedback. So yeah, and in that sense, thinking about the series we've had through all the 6 blocks of Under the Microscope, I've really enjoyed them and the way they've developed, and hopefully give you an idea of the process. The process really was from going from 11 aside to zoom in to the 1v1 duel, and how do they affect each other. And we use that quadrant to really get a clear view of the spaces and so on, and all those key factors. So once we've got that process as part of our toolkit as a coach, then it means within the game, we can go back to the 11 aside, but then zoom in. You have to, within the game, zoom in. What's the whole team doing? What's the shape, the 4-3-3, whatever's happening, the opponents, and then say, right, zoom into that duel like we have done today, the fullback and the winger, or the centre half, and so on. Now, the next steps for us in our sort of coaching then is that once we've got this clear, this process of really observing the individual, then we might go to the next stage, 2v2. But in essence, that shouldn't be that difficult a step if we've already been looking at and really got the idea of 1 versus 1 with all those key factors, and using it, inside the quadrant, and changes the direction, changes the speed, changes of rhythm, using your body as a barrier, all these different tactics within the 1v1 on the ball, and then off the ball, the same sort of things. All we're really doing is connecting them. And this is really enjoyable too, to now look at, say, let's look at 2v2s during the match, 2 centre halves against 2 forwards, a winger and a fullback against the opposing fullback or winger, 2 midfield players against each other, or anybody who's moving in position, to zoom in. And we look at the player on the ball and what does the player off the ball. So now you can look at 1-2s, a little pass and follow. It might be takeovers. It might be little diagonal runs, overlaps, where you can zoom in and look at the player individually on the ball, individually off the ball, and then make it now into a 2v2 that you're really looking at. And the next step, if you've got that really well, add in a third player. Now you've got the third man run, and now you start to see more patterns within the game and pictures that happen regularly. And then when they happen in the 11 aside, comes back into this, well, you see them more clearly. You're able to zoom in and out because your coaching toolbox allows you to zoom into that. You've seen that as a regular picture. You know the key factors. And when you know the key factors, you also know the common mistakes to look for. So before you're even going into the game, you're looking for a common mistake that may happen. Might be the striker, runs down the channel too soon. It might be the defender whose body is square on instead of side on. So you've got all of these in your locker, having been through hopefully this series of sessions to build up our knowledge on looking under the microscope and changing the focus from 1v1, 2v2, 3v3 to 11v11, then back in and out during a match. Yeah. Anything to add, Futch, on top of that, just as we finish? We've obviously gone through the session aims, utilising observation skills. We've interrogated the quadrant tool again, and we've observed the connections between players on, away, and around from the ball, and importantly, before the ball comes, before, during, and after. And then we're trying to look at the context of that and translating the 1v1 observational skills into, hopefully in the future, 2v2, 3v3, and the full game. I've really enjoyed the series. It's been good working with you along the way with it. And anything to add on this one or in general?
Yeah, I think you put it really well, and I think the skill is as well. You kind of go from the 1v1 and you can build it up to the 2v2. But once you get to 11v11, it's when to dip into that 1v1 and really home in on the individuals. Don't just kind of start with it and then forget about it. It's within that 11v11 what is actually going on. So if we're looking at defenders, then what is the body position? And the before, during, and after becomes vital, because like we saw on some of them clips, if the before part is wrong, then it's the during and the after is kind of, then it's almost too late sometimes, as we saw in one of the clips. So it's really homing in and kind of getting a really good understanding of what you want your players to be able to do, and then putting sessions on and practice design that allows them to practice in it. And you made a good point about games programs, and then transferring the skills we're teaching them in training into a game. So it all links together. So I think you've covered it really well, Paul. And it's been
yeah. And I think something you just said then, it's you're not just doing this and then saying, oh, I've got this skill and I put it away now. I just go up to tactics and 11v11 and so on, because the higher and higher up you go in the levels, and the more you improve as a coach, you actually see more and more things. So actually, for me, doing 20 odd years of coaching and then doing this series and looking closely at it, I've learned more and more things, and more players you do. And now we're getting into interviewing some of the top players about, you're learning more things. I mean, both the two of us spoke to Johnny Evans the other day, didn't we? And I coached him when he was 18, and now, you know, I'm learning more things off him now after the career he's had years later. So you're continually learning. So this is something that you should be refining. The higher up the level you go, the better the players, and they will be teaching you things as well. So yeah, I think this is a life skill for coaches, really, an observation skill, analysis skill that then you can think and be creative and put into your coaching. So it's been really enjoyable doing it with you, and yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in.
Cheers. Thank you.